10C, receive a report and provide direction on implementation of sustainable food packaging ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It is a pleasure to be before you again to discuss the Sustainable Food Packaging Ordinance and some new developments that are occurring with it. Some brief background. The ordinance went into effect on April 1st, 2010 after sort of a year-long lead time and a significant amount of public outreach. The ordinance does two things specifically. It bans the use of polystyrene for disposable food serviceware. That includes things like cups, lids, trays, straws, utensils, plates, also so anything you consider for a disposable item for food service is included in the ordinance, and you can't use polystyrene as a component. Further, it mandates that all that food serviceware be either reusable, recyclable, biodegradable, or compostable. And for our discussion later on in a few slides, the ordinance defines the recyclable plastics as numbers 1 through 5, and those numbers are the numbers you see on different types of containers that have sort of the triangle arrows and the number in the center. After implementation on April 1st, staff has done a survey sort of to see how it was being adopted citywide, and we found a couple of things. The first, which we're very happy about, is the success in virtually eliminating the use of the foam polystyrene or the styrofoam. This is the sort of the poster child of what a environmentally unsustainable, unfriendly product it is, and it's nice to see that being eliminated in almost all cases. Secondly, we found that non-biodegradable straws and utensils were still in use by a significant number of food vendors. And this is important sort of for several reasons. In the development of the ordinance and at ordinance adoption, any type of plastic utensils or straws were not considered recyclable by Recology San Bruno, our garbage company, and because they were not considered recyclable by them, they were considered prohibited by the ordinance. So that means even if it was a number 5 plastic, which the ordinance says is okay, because it wasn't deemed recyclable by a hauler, it was banned. And so in all of our outreach material, we said, 1 through 5 plastics are okay, except for straws and utensils. For that, you need to use a biodegradable alternative. There probably are a few reasons why that is a little harder to catch on. One is that, for that reason I cited, whereas some vendors could be, even though our outreach material said it pretty concisely, they may consider that their number 5 straws, number 5 utensils are good because, hey, number 5 is recyclable. So that may be an issue. Another issue is that biodegradable straws and utensils are still fairly costly compared to the regular polystyrene standard. And San Bruno's ordinance, like Millbrae's and South San Francisco's, is a bit more restrictive than some of the larger cities like San Francisco, where the ordinance only applies to the actual package itself. A lot of vendors in our outreach, we had to do some education that no, it's not just the packaging, it's everything. And so I think for those sort of trio of reasons is why we have a little harder time with the straws and utensils. However, a few interesting things are happening. Recology San Bruno, our garbage hauler, has increased what they accept into the blue bins as recyclable. So now they take plastics 1 through 7. Polystyrene number 6 plastic, not the foam, but the hard plastic that you'll see with the number 6 symbol, can be placed in the blue bin. Further, all plastic straws and utensils of whatever type are now considered recyclable. This is because that the facility that Recology San Bruno takes the material to considers all of that a recyclable product, and they feel they can find a market for that. So if we have this increase in what is considered a recyclable product by our garbage company, that may have an impact on our implementation of the ordinance from here on. So listed here, it's a tentative recommendation. It's what's described in the staff report, and this is sort of the most straightforward interpretation of the ordinance, is that as the ordinance still specifically bans the use of polystyrene, It's very, very clear that it's still not to be allowed in the use of disposable foodware products. So that sort of stands on its own. So regardless of what San Bruno garbage or Recology San Bruno accepts, food vendors cannot use polystyrene. But what could also happen now is that utensils and straws made from other types of plastic, for example, polypropylene, which is fairly cost competitive to polystyrene, could be considered allowable food service ware. So this doesn't change the ordinance. The ordinance isn't changed by this. This is just a broadening of what is considered recyclable, because our ordinance is referenced to specific types of plastics and what the garbage hauler accepts. So given that, there are a few options that the council could consider and provide direction to staff on. The first bullet there is what I had just described. This has the advantage of leaving the helping to achieve a higher rate of compliance among the food vendors. It would just involve only a little bit of additional outreach on our part to send a notification to vendors, knowing that there's an increase in number of products that you are allowed to have for your customers. With the caveat that even though some of the utensils and straws are considered recyclable, there may be some that aren't recycled, because the plastics would be commingled. The polypropylene utensils and straws would probably be commingled with the polystyrene utensils and straws, because you can't tell them apart on the sorting line because they don't have the numbers to differentiate between the two. The other option is to specifically amend the ordinance if council wanted to keep the compostable and biodegradable straws and utensils. That is an option. A third option is we could do some additional research to see if these items are actually recyclable. So the ordinance says recyclable plastics. What actually happens to the smaller plastic items that are sort of the miscellaneous plastic, and how they get processed? It's not entirely certain how well those items are recycled. So they get processed, and they're certainly kept out of the landfill, at least for the time being. But because they are considered a sort of polystyrene product, when polypropylene is mixed with polystyrene, and I apologize for mixing all these terms around, but when number 5 plastic is mixed with number 6 plastic, it's treated as number 6 plastic, right? And number 6 plastic, generally, we don't like. So there's a concern that you don't have a closed loop recycling project where you can't take a utensil and turn it back into a utensil. It have to become something else, like a computer case or a plastic doll, and then it gets thrown away. So that's not you can reuse it, but it's maybe not a closed loop recycling. So I'll leave it at that, and be happy to take some clarifying questions here and receive any direction. So we have those 3 options on the slide, and I'll stop.
How would you go about performing your research?
We would get with Recology San Bruno and make sure that we feel together that what we think is actually happening with this product. So that would involve discussions with the hauler. Would probably involve some research of some academic papers to see what actual peer-reviewed literature has said on what happens to recycled plastic. So it would be sort of a combination of discussion with some of our partners, other local agencies, and then just a little old-fashioned library work.
Okay, my personal feeling is to go ahead and perform the additional research. My concern is that if they're going to start accepting, 6 and 7 or whatever numbers you were talking about there, that the stuff is really not going to be recycled other than once, and that second time around it's going to be, dumped someplace where it's not going to biodegrade and it's not going to be recycled again. So I would guess that the research should be fairly easy because of Recology's commitment to help us out on this, and they must have done the research themselves already if they're accepting the items. So my personal feeling is I'd like you to perform the additional research before we start amending ordinances or leave it alone and just have the vendors assume certain things. So I'll open it up to the council.
My 2 cents is I'm in favor of also bullet point 3 for the additional research. I believe what the mayor had said, that it should be fairly straightforward and easy. I think Ecology's done probably a lot of the legwork for us, and then we can just partner up to ensure the information, the data we have, and the decisions we're making are fully thought through.
Anything else?
Through the chair, I think it's just confusing as hell. I think the spirit of the ordinance is that the businesses have complied. My only question is that are the big vendors like the fast food companies, I mean, are they, what number are they using? And can they tell? I mean, it's just so confusing. I mean, how are you supposed to expect, a small business owner to do it, and after they've pretty much changed over their containers and their majority of their utensils and things, and then now having to really get into understanding the science of plastic, and then again, how are we going to enforce it? I mean, the consumers out there not knowing what's number 5, number 6 recyclable, how many times or not. So I think it's until I think the time will come, and it's been my concern with this whole green thing, is that until everyone does it, I mean, there's always going to be those, certain parts of society that are going to slip through, like the grocery stores, like the big companies, like the big product companies and stuff. I mean, I went into a back room today, and there's this huge case of styrofoam coffee cups. So there's still a big business in that. So that's my concern, is that we're getting into a real strict part of compliance here, and it's, we're hitting our businesses when, the rest of the world is still, fighting over the styrofoam. So.
I agree to a certain extent, but then we established an ordinance, and the method which Recology collects stuff has changed, and I think we deserve it for ourselves to perform this additional research to find out what's going on. Sure, we can't do everything ourselves, but we got to start someplace. And you're talking about, why other cities are doing things and other cities not doing things. We're talking to Recology now about trying to get smaller bins for garbage because people are recycling more. That's a good thing. San Francisco has a wet garbage situation, and they're doing very well at it. And I'm talking to Recology now, or we are, about what can we do in San Bruno to, do the wet garbage thing. So you got to start someplace, and it's made one heck of a difference, I know, in my household, just on the recycling. You got a smaller bin now for garbage, and a huge thing, which is filled almost all the time with cardboard and everything else, whereas before it used to be thrown away. So San Bruno, years ago, was at the forefront of recycling, and I think we have to stay there. So my personal feeling is to perform additional research, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the council. Irene?
Ms. Green.
Yeah, Miss Green, thank you. Ms. Green.
Ms. Green.
It is a confusing thing for people when they go to McDonald's or whatever and get a straw and they don't know what to do with it. So that part is confusing, but I think as time goes on, it'll be less and less confusing, and I hope and I'm confident that eventually we won't be selling those things, nobody will be buying them, and it won't be a problem anymore. But in the meantime, we need to do as much as we absolutely can. So yes, perform the additional research and figure out if we need to mandate any changes or make any changes in the ordinance. Another thing we might look at doing, and this sounds kind of simple, I know, but Starbucks does a discount if you bring your own coffee mug in, that kind of thing. It occurred to me just while we were sitting here, the stores, there's such a fight about the containers for bringing in. Basically, you're bringing leftovers home. If people want to, why can't they bring their own containers and put their own leftovers in it? I mean, that just another thing that we could suggest to restaurants, a 25-cent discount, or you don't, whatever it is, but it's something in addition that we can add to what we're doing. But certainly somebody out there has more information than we do, and I'm sure you can find it out. And now that we have the library opens on Friday, you can have a little more time to do it.
Michael, anything?
Just
Had to put that on.
one comment. You mentioned that having the different numbered plastics combined into the same stream causes that problem where it's not a closed system. It seems to me that you can never really, even if you have all of the food vendors in the city comply with this, you're still blending in the residential garbage into that stream, and there's no regulation on that. So it almost seems impossible to keep that stream clean, unless I'm missing something.
Well, I think as part of our research, we would, since we're looking into it, make sure that it is appropriate to accept those items even for residents to put in there. So is it really even appropriate, even though the recycling facility is taking it, is it appropriate really to be calling that a recycled commodity? Because they'll take anything they have a market for. And so right now there's a market for commingled small plastic items. But is it, as we do this research, we determine if that is really, are we being faithful to our customers to say that this product is actually being recycled? And so if that's not appropriate, maybe one of the recommendations that could come back is, maybe we need to amend what we take into the blue bin, potentially. But I mean, I sort of agree with you that you are setting up ourselves up for this sort of dual system. And so we'll definitely try to clarify that when we come back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It sounds like we have a consensus. Do we need a motion on this? Okay. Do some research. Thank you.